So it'll be recording right now, and then once this thing catches up, so people should be able to like see what we're doing already. All right, hey gang, this is Ryan Callahan with First Lite. With me is Ross Copperman, also of First Lite. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd love to. My name's Ross. I work with Cal and the gang here at First Lite. Been here for a little while, and today I'm here to talk to Cal and Bo Beatty here of Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas, and we're going to talk about everything llama and the joys and the trials and the tribulations and just kind of how they're maybe a little bit different than most beasts of burden you see out in the backcountry these days.
Yes. So, this is our continuation of cool folks swinging by the office. Like Ross said, Bo Beatty, Wilderness Ridge Pack Llamas. That is our excuse to take off a day of work and go fishing again. So I will tell you, out of all the llama experience here, I have probably the least and also probably the worst. Growing up, if you're sitting on the back of a mule and you're looking at folks with llamas, you're always like, look at those fruitcakes. So, they're strange and odd creatures, right? And the reason that we had anything to do with llamas is we had them as protection animals in with the sheep. And they weren't all that pleasant to be around. They have some real odd things. So, Bo, thanks for enduring this situation.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
How did you decide to be one of the strange people?
I mean, you come from a long line of outfitters, correct?
Yeah, my family has basically been making a living off the land for 5 generations, hunting, fishing, trapping, outfitting, etc. So, growing up, that was our heritage, and my great grandfather taught me how to trap, and I trapped through high school, and we packed llamas and we packed mules and draft horses. And when I was growing up, my dad would always get super mad at me because I would always lead the horses or the mules and walk everywhere we went. The thoroughfare, the Frank Church, and he always got pissed. And I just felt this need to walk. Mm-hmm. I felt like it's probably not true, but I felt like I was a better hunter. I felt like I was more connected to my surroundings. And so when I stumbled across llamas in Argentina, all of a sudden the wheel started spinning. It was always ingrained in me. So my family's been the horse and mule people for many generations, and so being the llama person of it now, I'm even more of a weird person.
Yeah.
Because my family is so integrated into the horses and mules. So
I got to tell you, when I tell my friends, before we rented some of your llamas and this, that, and the other, and I'd refer to you as Bo, the llama guy. The looks on their faces, and you can see the wheels turning, like what they imagined you to be was probably out there. Because I think most people associate llamas as, because they are very unique critters. They have a lot of expressions. They have a lot of personality. I think that's one thing that I learned, that llamas aren't all just dumb stock animals. They have very distinct personalities. They can be very stubborn. They can be very helpful. There's a lot to them. A lot of depth. Your average llama.
Yeah, we're taking a llama on this trip named Butch, and he's the most quirky llama ever. And he's just like a little squirrel, and their unique personalities are interesting. They keep it fun.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying as far as, I have friends that it truly gets to the point where it's no different than driving a motorcycle probably, or a car or something, when you're sitting on the back and just you're logging a lot of hours on the trail or a lot of hours in the saddle, and all of a sudden you're not as much of a participant.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I'd agree with that. We have our video feed's not working super great, but the questions are coming in. Definitely let us know if you're not getting the video feed, and we may have to try to do a quick restart on this one. We do have some good llama questions. Bridget, what are you seeing on your end?
Seems to be okay.
All right, we got one thumbs up. Can you speak to the sure-footedness of the animal, right? Because for us, we have horses that are not heads until they get much older. It seems like mules out of the gate are way more sure-footed.
Definitely.
Where do you guys think the llama falls in there?
So I can speak to my experience. Maybe it'd be good to hear from Ross, because he rented llamas last year from us, and I would sell it pretty hardcore, but it'd be maybe.
Well, yeah. So, for you, how did you start? Like, why did you pick a llama?
Yes.
Why did you roll the dice?
So it's a long story that I'm really gonna wrap up. I had a guardian llama. To Cal's point, one of the traditional roles of llamas, at least in this country, is that you put them in a single llama with, say, a flock of sheep or any sort of prey animal. That llama will bond with those animals because it's by itself, and llamas are naturally somewhat protective. They're also very curious. So let's say a coyote comes running up, that llama is going to charge out there to see what it is, and more or less, a lot of times, inadvertently scare that predator away. So I had one of those. Her name was Janet Reno, and she was the most uncooperative, god-awful beast. I've owned some sheep, I've owned a lot of dogs, a lot of animals, and it was awful. She has since been retired, but oddly enough, through Janet, what I did learn, to Bo's point, they are incredibly capable animals, and they're incredibly low maintenance. So for me, I've used horses before, but I'm by no means comfortable around horses, or especially by myself. And the thought of keeping a horse alive and fit and happy was more than I could bite off. So I got curious about llamas. I knew you could put them out to pasture. They eat natural food. I don't have to feed them hay, this, that, and the other. And they're super quiet. Janet used to scare the heck out of me all the time because I'd be out there working on a fence, doing something, and all of a sudden I'd turn around and she'd be sitting there. And, they're creepy. Like, they're really quiet and they lurk. So the thought occurred to me, I think I saw something about pack llamas, and so I started doing some research, and every llama person I contacted via the internet sent me to Bo. They were all like, you have to talk to Bo in Idaho Falls. This is the one guy that knows about hunting as it pertains to llamas. He's got the stock. Called Bo. We hit it off. I was really curious about it, and that's how I kind of ended up doing two different, one archery trip, one rifle trip last year with just a handful of Bo's llamas. And to circle back, sorry, that was long-winded, to the sure-footedness, I was also nervous. I mean, these things can have a lot of weight on them, and they're decidedly smaller than a mule or a horse, so it's a little deceptive in terms of how much they can carry. But they can side hill and stay upright with absolutely zero problems through anything that you can. That was my experience. I mean, we were side hilling the Sawtooths in the White Clouds and very uneven, gnarly terrain. It had been snowing and hailing, so everything was slick. I mean, we were slipping and trying to lead them. The llamas were just frankly laughing. I mean, they were totally at ease. We went down into some ravines, some pretty gnarly stuff. One point I remember I had to put my hands up and get out of this ravine, and the llamas, which were tethered together, there were 4 of them, just easily slipped right up, and they're like, no big deal.
Nice.
So from that standpoint, I mean, being quiet and sure-footed, huge advantages, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And I want to touch on the weirdness also, because a couple of things that stick out to me is llamas spit on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
We had a llama that really disliked an uncle of mine and became a common target, which led to the demise of that llama, or at least the retirement. It moved on to somebody else, and also they poop in the same spot.
That is bizarre.
Which is weird.
So sorry, Bo, but with Janet, one of my favorite games, because she and I hated each other, and she would poop in a giant pile, and she'd come back there every day and make her poop pile, and I'd come out there in the tractor and move her poop and watch her freak out. She did not like her poop being relocated. And I thought, hey, tit for tat.
Wow.
That's what you get.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but to your point, it's very strange in that way. They poo in a pile.
So, we were talking about this yesterday. You're such a llama guy that some of the weirdness is just llamas to you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But is there anything that sticks out, like the number one difference between working with llamas or any other type of stock?
You know, we'll say llamas up, so we won't count goats in this.
Okay.
We've raised goats as well, pack goats, and settled on the llamas. But I think the one thing that's really different is when you get somebody that's around horses or mules. A lot of the times they get around llamas, and you can just see their demeanor. They're trying to figure them out. They're trying to figure out what it is. And when the llama swings around its rear end towards that person or just is moving, the people all go like that, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's just one thing. You always need to be worried about it, but it's not. It just doesn't happen. It's their natural state of being around them. They're just very work oriented.
All right.
And they're not going to like purposely step on you or kick you. And they definitely can, right? But that's the one big difference is how easy they are to be around. And
but part of that's attributed to the breeds you work with, right? And that's one thing
definitely.
you were careful to tell me. Like I literally traded a case of Keystone Lite
Good question.
for Janet Reno. But you told me Craigslist llamas, bad idea.
yeah, generally a bad idea. But I found some good, really inexpensive llamas. But the breed of a llama, a lot of people don't even know there's different breeds of llamas. You know, and there's different breeds of goats. You're not going to pack a milk goat, and you're not going to, go into the mountains into Frank Church with an Arabian horse.
Right.
And you're going to, a pack llama is a certain breed and excel at when they're bred for that purpose.
There's definitely some great questions on here, all of which I am curious about as well.
Perfect.
Probably one of the most common I'm seeing is the weight issue, like how much of a load can a llama carry, right? So I think what would come to mind for me is like, well, I can get a mule and break it of stepping on my heels if I want to lead it around.
Sure.
And it can carry, depending on the size of the mule, at least a few hundred pounds. How many pack llamas does it take to equal a mule?
Right.
And there's some other benefits too, but we'll get into that. So
Yeah, so when you're breaking down weight, it's basically a good trained pack llama, and the breed of llamas that we're using, guys, are classics, referred to most commonly as a classic llama, or Cara llama, which is spelled C-C-A-R-A. And these guys, the llama size, just to give you an idea, they're usually 360 to 420 pounds. And at the top of the shoulder, they're about 48 inches. And that's a really good sized animal. But our average llama is about right there. And so when looking at percent of body weight, right, when you look at a horse or a mule and say, yeah, they can pack 200 pounds, 150 pounds. Okay, well, what's that percent of the body weight, right? How far are you going? How long are you doing it? And growing up with packing with horses, and I'll just kind of round about here, our llamas commercially right now, what we do, we outfit from Yellowstone down to Utah during the summer, and then we rent llamas all fall. The llamas work over a 160-day season now, and they'll work over 120 days of that 160-day season, so they have very few breaks. And so they'll do...
They're very fit.
They're very fit, yeah. And so we'll pack them at 25% of their body weight to give everyone an idea. So we put them on the scale. We know how much they weigh. And so we pack... And typically that's almost always right there around 70 to 90 pounds. And so
Per llama.
Per llama. And when we talk about 70 to 90 pounds per llama, that's the actual packs, right? And their saddles and their rigging are 10 pounds. So when I say we're packing 80 pounds, what that means is 40 on this side of the pannier, 40 on this side of the pannier, plus that's 10 pounds that I'm not telling you about, that's the saddle.
Gotcha.
And so some of those llamas are carrying 22% of their body weight, 20%. Some are carrying closer to 30. Because some of my llamas are 330 pounds, some of my llamas are 420 pounds.
Yep.
And so roughly we work them commercially right around 25% of their body weight.
Now, the versatility can come. I know a guy who puts llamas in the back of a 15-passenger van. To me, I'm like, that is knowing nothing else about them. That's the most appealing thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I'm like, oh well, no trailer, one rig. That's great. Now, do you have that has to equate to things in the backcountry as well, like slide areas, very uneven terrain.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they can be put into a plane, correct? Haven't
Yeah.
I heard of people putting them into larger backcountry airplanes?
Yeah, Cessna 206 and 207, you can get them in. And we built this little seatbelt apparatus. And so,
You're gonna have to talk louder.
sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
Yep.
But you can get llamas in a plane back of your pickup truck. Last year I hunted in Wyoming, and a friend of mine and I, we harvested 2 mule deer, and we went in 7.5 miles into Region G, which most of you people know. To give you an idea, llamas, we got into the trailhead and it had rained. For those of you who hunted Region G a couple years ago, it was horrendous rain and snow. And we put the llamas in the back of the pickup truck. After we trailered about 3 hours, and we trailered them there,
Yep.
but we couldn't get to the trailhead, and we were going
Crammed 'em in the
to
pickup
hike
bed.
18 miles.
Yeah.
So we crammed them in the pickup bed, no sidewalls or anything, just tied them down to little rings down in the corner. Said, "Stay in there," and we went, another 10 miles, a little over 10 miles, and then got to the trailhead, and we had to shuttle them because we had 6 llamas, and we can only get 3 in the back of my 6-foot bed. So, and away we went.
Highly portable.
Highly portable.
Classic llama.
Yeah.
But in the backcountry, I've been in. When you're hunting, we're outfitting in the summer, we don't get into scary situations because people are coming from all over the world to go on these hiking expeditions in the Gros Ventre and Yellowstone. But in the backcountry, when you're hunting, you get in this. Your adrenaline's going. You got a certain amount of time to be out there. You get yourself into bad situations.
Yeah.
And there's no better animal to get yourself in a bad situation with, in my opinion, than a good llama.
This kind of segues nicely into, for those of you who don't know, like renting stock is fairly common. We've always had pretty poor experiences with renting horses. You don't know really what you're getting, but they always tell you they're going to be great. And myself personally, you work with the same 15, 16 llamas all summer long. Like you said, very few breaks. You know their character. You know what they're like. You certainly have some sort of attachment to them. Is it tough for you to rent these things out? What are the negatives? Like,
How strong is your emotional bond to your llamas?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we own 130 llamas, and 52 of them are male packers that we rent out and use commercially. And all of those are booked up from September to the mid of November.
Okay.
And so just to kind of give you an idea, and when I first started renting them, I was in college, had no money, and if I didn't rent them, the llamas didn't get to eat. So I had to rent them to be able to pay for the feed, and that's kind of where all this started. And I was just nervous.
Yeah, crazy.
Because they're my babies. I raised them, I bred them, I trained them, I packed with them. We've shared the memories together. And so everyone in the community is like, "You did what? You rented out your llamas?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And now I'm like, "Yeah, I ran out my llamas because they're badasses, right? They're well trained. They're extremely conditioned. They have over 2,000 miles of experience before we send them out with people. And each of them has a different personality, but not like a horse or mule. You don't need to describe to someone all the different character traits or flaws of that animal. It's like, this is what you need to do. If you follow this, rule of thumb with all these different protocols, you're going to have a good time. Just don't go out of these set of rules, and you're going to have a great experience. And yet we haven't had one renter come back and say this is a horrible experience. And every time they pick up the phone call, I'm waiting for that terrible experience, but they haven't. And we've worked hard so that people have a great experience.
Because, different horses and mules, once you develop that relationship, and it's all trial and error type relationship, but certain animals need to be rigged a certain way to prevent, saddle sores, certain stock, they carry weight differently.
Sure.
So, are animals getting sored up? Are they getting sore feet? Are they, because Ross had said that, if they feel like they're in trouble, they're just going to lay down. Do they keep themselves out of trouble?
Yeah, they keep themselves out of trouble for the most part. When it comes to the saddle and rigging, when I first started commercial outfitting, all of our llamas got saddle sore. And I spent 3 years developing our own saddle system. Met a guy out of Wyoming, really awesome mule deer hunter, llama packer, and he had developed a design. So we took his design and we tweaked it, made some changes, and now we don't have any saddle soreness with their llamas. and so that's obviously really great. And then on the trail, getting into trouble, I have one llama named Massey Ferguson, named after the tractor. And I don't know why, but when he's staked out, they're staked out with 18-foot long lead, and so they have 18 foot. They have the radius of 18 feet, and he always gets tangled up on the smallest little branch or twig or a sagebrush, anything, right? And somehow he's a Houdini, and he gets him out of it, And so a llama, after years of experience, before we send them on the trail, we typically don't send them on the trail till they're 7 years old with the public. Llamas have got me out of bad places, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We were in the Frank Church in 2012 hunting mule deer, and the hunt, I remember it opened up on the first. We went in there, and we got 2 feet of snow on the night before the opener, and there was a bunch more snow coming in. Well, 2 feet is about as much snow as you can push llamas through, because it starts getting at their belly, and once they get at their belly, then they have to hop to go through it, which wears them out. So if you can keep it from being low to their belly, you're pretty safe. And
but there's some variables out there.
There's
a couple of wind drifts.
There's some variables, and we've got there's a llama documentary, and it's called Llama Nation, and we take llamas through 3.5 and 4.5 feet snow drifts. And so if you watch that llama documentary on iTunes, you get to see the llamas going through, snow that's up to the top of
not
their
unlike
back.
a dog. Like they have to work a lot harder if they're hopping through that snow, and you're
With the weight. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it wears them out. Just like elk. You've seen elk migrate, go through the snow.
Yep.
I mean, they get exhausted,
Yes,
after a
very
certain
quickly.
distance. Yeah, very quickly.
So Ross, I think this is a good thing to touch on. You had, not as tight a bond of llama experience as Bo had. You talked to him on the phone, kind of probably relayed your experience, what you had.
Yep.
And, how nervous were you to take these things out for the first time?
That's a great question. I think I'm guessing I was a little bit more confident in it maybe than someone who has never been around any sort of stock or anything like that, because I've helped my friend with some cattle. I had sheep, so somewhere in my head I was like, it can't be that different, but I hope it's not like Janet, because that's going to be a flaming, dumpster fire, right? But after talking to Bo for a long time, and Bo was just like, dude, stop worrying about it. These things have been doing this to this point for thousands of miles. They know what's going on. We went to pick it up. One of Bo's assistants met us there, and she gave us like a 30-minute tutorial about how to properly saddle them, all the dynamics that Bo was talking about, which is really pretty simple. Making sure the alpha in your group is in the lead. That's, I think, one of the most important things. Otherwise, if he's in the middle, he's going to be trying to bite everyone around him. They tell you who the alpha is in that group. We follow that direction, get him saddled at the trailhead, and honestly, this is no exaggeration. Both trips I went on with 2 different friends of mine, one of our sales reps, one my hunting partner, we didn't have one micro issue. These llamas were so well trained, and to Bo's point, you can tell they really like to work. They want to go. So there's no coercion, there's no slapping them or anything like that. You put that halter on them and you get them going, and they're happy and they want to go. It was shocking. And that's the biggest surprise to me. And both the people that went with me, that were both new to llamas, this is one of them made this is cheating. These things are so easy and so cooperative. And you get to camp and you can get them all staked and the pannier off and all that sort of stuff, and maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and they're happy. It's way less intimidating than you think it is, back to your question. That's how I'd summarize it, is anyone, if you're confident and you're comfortable around animals, even if you're not, I think you can't really mess it up.
Yeah.
So, but you have to have a vetting process, right?
Absolutely.
When Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo calls from wherever in the country, and they're like, yeah, we're coming out to your area, want to get some llamas. Do you have a pretty bulletproof questionnaire that you kind of run through?
Yeah, for sure. I had a guy call
Some of
me.
this may not be something you want to share publicly.
Oh, no, this is
know,
good.
so.
This is good. If you guys get to know me, it's all out there. There is nothing kept. Had a guy call me from Minnesota today. He says, hey, Bo, I'm going to the Wind Rivers, rock climbing. I need 6 llamas, and I need them this date. I already know how much it costs. Just send me an invoice. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Back to our first point, these are still my llamas. These are still my babies. nobody's just getting them like that easy. So I asked them questions like, have you used them before, you know? And I want to know where they're going.
You can't just show up and take my daughter on a date, all right?
Good point. And, so I like to fill people out and see where they're at. And most people kind of divulge everything right off the get-go, but some people don't. And the people that don't, I gotta figure out what they're doing, what their interest is. You know, rock climbing is going to come and rent llamas from us and climb rocks for 4 days and not pay attention to llamas is not what we're looking for. We want people that are going to be engaged, and we do leave the llamas at camp when we're hunting. A lot of times we take them with us throughout the day because if we harvest something, it's simple just to kill it, put it in your panniers, and bring it back. Right?
Yep.
And so, unless you're mobile camping, then it's a different story. So we definitely vet people to figure out what it is they're doing, their interest level. And there's very few people. So this is our 6th year of renting llamas. I think we've only turned away 3 people. And some people take the training class, need to take the training class more than once.
Yep.
And I kind of foresee that. And so I recommend, why don't you come out this summer? Let's do an overnight hiking trip with us, a guided hiking trip, which is $325. One night, 2 days. We provide all the food, all the gear. You know, people fly in from all over the country to do that with us. And it just breaks down all the barriers and all the questions, and for them and me. And just then they can go into the next stage, renting them with confidence.
Yeah.
So
I mean, one quick story to Bo's point that gives you an idea about these llamas. We were hiking out of the first trip, and had been beaten by rain for 5 days, tired, and we had about a 3,500 foot, give or take, vertical climb. It was really steep. So we're going up there, and my friend that I was with, is one of our sales reps, got into the pain cave, per se, just hiking out, you know, a little bit delirious, just trotting along up the super steep, loose, muddy trail. And inadvertently, without knowing it, he dropped the lead. So he keeps hiking and went about 200 yards without the llamas.
I haven't heard the story, by the way.
And didn't know it. Yeah. And I was way ahead of him. I was hunting maybe a half mile ahead of him. So I was out of the picture, and he's telling me the story. And basically, he kind of comes to out of the pain cave, and he realizes, I don't have any llamas. Thinks, those things are in the next county or back down in the river or whatever. And he ran back down the trail, and they were literally stopped waiting for him exactly where he had dropped the lead, waiting for him to come get him. And they were just sitting there, and he just grabbed it.
And the lead was free? Like the
Absolutely.
lead llama hadn't stepped on it or anything?
Yeah, they could have gone to Olive Garden. It was like free for all, free at last, liberation for the llamas. And they just sat there and waited for him to come back. And to Bo's point, I didn't hear about the story until we were back at the truck either, because I think Trex was a little, I don't know if he was embarrassed or whatever, but felt like, he messed up. Fortunately, that's how well trained these things are. I mean, they knew.
But it's not the experience with horses and mules.
Yeah.
That I have.
Which, they're different. And so we start talking about the pros and cons of horses, goats, and llamas. And one's not better than the other. They just have different aspects. But that is definitely something different from llamas to well-trained llamas to horses, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I say comments to people like that all the time. You know, well, they're different than this in horses. But you're asking me if it's different. So I'm not knocking horses or mules because I have a great respect, especially for good mules.
Mm-hmm.
But it is different, and I recognize the difference with an unbiased opinion.
Yep. Yeah.
What are, I think, like one question that we're getting, and I think is a good question. What are the disadvantages? I mean, obviously they can carry less weight per animal. We know that. Are there other
compared to a horse
or a mule? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are there other disadvantages from your standpoint that you might tell people are comparing the two?
If you're comparing horses and mules versus llamas, there's very few disadvantages. I mean, if you want to ride,
I'd like to point. If you're a fat ass,
you simply
that's a disadvantage.
If you want to ride, don't look at the llamas. And I know people like this question, and they ask me all the time, but it just doesn't resonate with me. Can we ride the horse and pack the llama behind the horse? And I was like, I don't even understand why would you do that?
Yeah.
I'm a hiker. I love to backpack hunt, and the llamas are my beast of burden that I take. And so if you're going to pack with the llamas, pack with the llamas. You're going to ride the horses, ride the horses. And one, I guess, I can't really answer. Disadvantages. I keep thinking about the disadvantages, and then I keep thinking about the advantages, because I just recently went on a horse pack train trip, and to help a friend of mine take some stuff into Yellowstone. And the whole time I thought, man, these horses drink a ton of water.
That's
Great question.
We have to bring in a lot of feed for
Yeah.
these guys. And I just forgot, because it's been 3-4 years.
Yeah.
And my llamas go 3 to 4 days without drinking water sometimes. Even though I give them water every day, I'm like, drink, drink, drink.
That's something to like.
3-4 days later, they're barely drinking. Right?
You made it very clear to me, fortunately, but we did a route where the first 2 nights we were away from water, and we crossed water a couple times, and they wouldn't drink. And this is, we're at this point we're probably 12 miles in or something over 2 days or something like that on this first trip. They had no interest in water, and we were getting a little freaked out. We're like, if something, I know Bo told me this, but this seems really strange. It's really hot out, all the above. And finally we got down to this river about maybe 16 miles into this thing or something like that, and they walked into the river and proceeded to drink for about 15 minutes, like a snorkel, for like 15 minutes. Then they pooed and urinated for another 10 minutes in the river, furiously. And then they're like, all right, let's do this. Yeah. So not having to carry water with you, to your point, or certified organic hay or this, that, and the other, obvious advantage. Yeah. But it's a little bit creepy at first, or a little bit disconcerting when an animal works that hard and doesn't drink for multiple days. But they're a camel.
And you give them the chance to drink, and they don't. I have some of the veterans. They realize take it every chance you get, because sometimes Bo does some crazy crap and doesn't get us in a great spot. But definitely tell everyone renting llamas and using them, give them a chance to drink every day for sure. Yeah. Night and morning is best. And then one of the big advantages, and I'll think of something about a disadvantage when I do. I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I just want to point out is just last week being in that horse trip and then going on this one with the llamas, I'm thinking the carrot camp, we're going to take 14 llamas up and go on our fishing trip tomorrow. And I'm thinking, I'm not even worried about the carrot camp.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so simple. It's quick and easy. Mm-hmm. And if we had that many horses or half that many or even, a third, 2, 3, 4 horses, the care and the time is, unbelievable how much different that
That's
is.
my biggest. I will very happily hike further with a much heavier pack in order to not bring stock, so I can truly focus on the hunting.
Sure.
Because, get into camp, dump the packs off everybody. Everybody likes to roll around, scratch a little bit.
Yep.
Tie them off. Run a single strand hot fence. Sometimes it takes us 45 minutes probably max if we're going to be in there for a while. 20 to 45 minutes though I would think is pretty normal, depending on how brushy things are and making sure the hot fence is actually working. We'll let them graze around in there, tie everybody off before we really head to bed for the night, or before we head out and hunt. We, just because we've had some branches and things come down on the hot fence in the past, windstorms while you're out actually hunting. But we never ever worry about predators, because we've seen mules toss coyotes. We've seen mules stand up to wolves multiple times, stuff like that. But it just becomes a lot of work, and then absolutely no fun when they decided to just run back to the trailhead without you. But so on the llama side of things, what is the maintenance, the care in camp? You're ground staking everything, which is something we certainly don't do. And predators, are you worried about predators? Can you leave them for an entire day?
You had one that had a run into the cat, correct?
Yeah, so we had a llama get attacked by a mountain lion. Another llama pushed off the cat and was trying to trample the cat with its chest. It was kind of going down, and they've got the brisket. So,
that's badass.
And then 2 years ago, I had a llama kill a gopher and a porcupine and a coyote in the same year. And it's
Same llama?
Same llama. She's the matriarch, and they all came into the pasture, where the baby llamas are, and they call baby llamas crias. And so she's the matriarch, and she was killing. And the porcupines, that was a bad one, because the porcupines are all white. Yeah, when you pull out their quills, they're not white anymore. They're black. And I walk on, what's that skunk? That's not a skunk, it's a porcupine. It was a bad deal. So, and then 3 years ago, I was in the Frank church, and 2 or 3 years ago, I shot an elk, was going to go over to pick it up the next day with the llamas, and I get over there and there's wolves. They're about 600 yards from my elk, just right, carcass, just going right for it. And there's 4 of them, shot one, and those other 3 wolves, they stayed around that day and the next day howling and howling and howling. And they came up when I got back to camp. Those 3 wolves had somehow, I don't know if they followed us or they just keyed in on the llamas, but they came over the ridge and were camped just underneath the ridge. And they came over and they were going like this, looking at the llamas. And then the llamas started doing their alarm call. It kind of sounds like
I characterize it as like a Ewok. If you guys have seen any of the Star Wars movies or anything, and when the Ewoks start screaming when they're kicking ass on the stormtrooper mobiles, that is, Janet used to do it all the time. She hated mule deer, and she'd just start screaming. It's like no other noise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's loud.
You know what it is.
You know exactly what it is.
So the llamas started doing that, boom, 3 wolves go back down the other side. And so why they were there, I don't know what they were doing, but I've seen that happen a lot of times. Black bears, I've got a video on YouTube one of our guests did. We were up in the Alaska Basin, up in the Jedediah Smith Wilderness, and midday, brown bear, cinnamon phase, comes into camp, right into camp, like pokes out of the timberline, and there's a nice lake there, and all the llamas, you can see in the video, start doing their alarm call, and the bear just scampers up. So those are some of my encounters with, I always worry about it. Grizzlies is probably the thing I worry about the most. Just some of the experiences I've had in the thoroughfare and in Yellowstone, I always worry about the grizzlies, but I've never had any interactions with them, so I really can't speak to
dense
that.
grizz areas, are you more often than not just taking the string with you in hunting situations? Or you got somebody that's hanging out in camp, or will you take them with you one day and leave them ground steak for a day, or how do you kind of balance that out?
So that's a good question. It's always, every day is different, depending on what we're doing. If we take them with us, all is well. We typically in bear country always have an electric fence if it's permitted by the area.
Yep.
And so we can put electric fence up, and then we put little bells on the llamas. And some of the experts say it doesn't work. Whether it does or not, I don't know. And then I'll gamble on that. And then the radio, we bring a battery radio, and turn it on, and the white noise seems to really help at camp, right? Keep predators away. And that's an outfitter trick that my dad used to do. And he never.
So just turn the radio to static.
The radio on. Well, see if you can get something, right?
Right.
If nothing, I have seen grizzlies come into other camps and then bounce around ours because of the radio, and I've seen it on multiple occasions. So
all right, feeling pretty good about that
one. I think
one.
that works. Electric fences obviously are great. High density areas, always make me nervous. So I try to take all the protocols: bear hangs, electric fences, bear containers are necessary, the bells, the radio, and bear spray. I don't want to have any problems, right?
Yes.
We just got a good question. I don't want to put Bo in an uncomfortable spot, but it's something that,
Like tightly squeezed in between 2 men.
like 2 dudes, man sandwich.
Yes.
You're doing a great job, Bo. This is something that came up on our Facebook page maybe a week ago. It became a really hot topic, and I thought maybe Bo would want to comment on it. Desiree Stark, sorry to lean in here, guys, put my mug in the thing, but pack goats have been getting a lot of heat about the bighorn sheep. I think disease transmission has been a pretty big topic of conversation. Is that something you want to comment on with llamas? What's your understanding of that? Is it the same sort of the dynamic? Is it different? Is that a concern?
So we can really go down that wormhole if we want to. So I'm just going to kind of cover the top.
Yeah, cover the top.
First of all, I love mules. I prefer half draft horses and Tennessee Walker crosses. I love good pack llamas, and I love goats, and I've used them all, owned them all, bred them all. Pack goats are really catching a lot of heat right now, and there's a lot of science out there that may or may not be accurate, and so it's really hard to decipher who's bringing the science to the table and is it accurate data or not.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I research it and go through it, and I've been an advocate about 6 years ago in the Wind Rivers, maybe it was 4 years ago, was having a debate on whether or not to allow pack goats. And we operate in the Wind Rivers, and they came to us and we said, we operate with our llamas. We have no problem with the pack goats being in there if they want to be recreation or commercial use. And I don't think as far as I've researched, I have not found 100% guaranteed documentation with that yet.
Okay.
But still, it still keeps coming up, right? And with the llamas, they also, especially in British Columbia, it's been a huge debate and still kind of is always ongoing. Somebody has a question, then they raise it up, and because there's not a lot of llama packers in British Columbia, it rises to the top until the people in the States get wind of it, and then we kind of crush it back down, right?
Yep.
And so I don't know why people bring it up. Obviously, they really care deeply about the bighorn sheep, as do I. But until the science is there and 100% proven and is unfallible, just keep rolling and keep packing and keep having a great time out there. But, you know,
Cal, what's your
you got to
take
keep
on
fighting for it, too, though.
So we tackled this a little bit off of one of the posts that we've done in the past, but interestingly enough, Wild Sheep hasn't put out an official statement on this, and that's what I jumped over and was speaking with those folks, and it seems that the ability for the goats to transmit, a type of pneumonia to sheep is almost nil. However, everyone still recommends vaccination for all your pack animals. I don't truly think it's that expensive unless you have a bunch of goats, but I personally know folks that have trained, exercise pack goats, taken them all over the place, and just the weight of the what if has kept them out of all the sheep areas and eventually led to them getting rid of their goats because they were just, they didn't want to be the person that
Did that.
that screwed up.
Patient
So,
zero.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
unfortunate.
But I'm going to follow back up with Wild Sheep, and we'll get some stuff posted up once I get a hold of their biologist folks that are running that side of things. But yeah, that is a great question. And man, sheep are in such a tough way, and it's really because they are so susceptible to these diseases that exercise caution for sure. I should bring up the fact that we have some awesome swag.
Yeah.
Awesome questions. I know we burned a bunch of time already, but there's some killer pack goat. You could be the only kid on your block with a pack goat hat. Or I'm sorry, a
llama.
pack llama hat.
He's a
You
goat
slap
guy.
him.
Start
Slap
going down
him.
the other way.
Can we put
Yes.
somebody else on the trip tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Slap that bird right off his face.
So, let's talk about the trip. Like, how do you see this going down? You got a lot of cats to herd. For
So
sure.
I think to get the back story on the trip that we're doing, because I don't think we talked about that really quickly. We are basically meeting up with a bunch of friends up north in sort of the Stanley Basin greater area up there. And Bo and his crew of guides are going to take a bunch of us from the outdoor industry, some friends from other brands, and along with hopefully some media outlets that are going to come along. And it's just kind of a good time celebration of public land and the resources that we all get to share. And Bo's kind of put this trip together for us. So on behalf of everyone, I think we all thank Bo. But the idea is to go to some lakes and go fishing. So, sorry.
That's how I see it going. Take some friends and some llamas and go fishing. I'm really excited for the people that have questions about llamas to be able to go on the experience, see what it's all about, and then be an ambassador or advocate. So when they say, I went on this experience, here's my Instagram post, and the people ask questions, that they feel confident in answering those questions, you know?
Yeah.
That's really what I hope is just raise awareness for the llamas.
Because you said yesterday that you want it to be interactive, right? So you want the folks on the trip to at
Take
least
part.
lead a llama, hopefully.
Yep. Saddle, unsaddle, help pack, lead, just interact, see what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And then trips like this, food.
Yeah.
Like that's all people are very concerned about starving
What's on
to
the
death
menu?
in the woods. Yeah.
First of all, why don't we start with, because everybody loves this. Cal, what are you cooking for dinner tonight? So tonight we're doing a lowland camp at a cabin that's kind of in the Brands family, and it's going to be before we pack anywhere, and Cal has prepared a menu that only Ryan Callahan can really prepare for everybody. Why don't you tell everybody?
It's got to have wild game, right?
Yeah, of course. Now that I'm thinking about this, I'm like, my God, I hope there's enough food and one of those things. But yeah, 3 nice sized moose roasts that I got up this morning and smoked on the Traeger, and we're gonna thin slice those. Made this really good barbecue sauce that our buddy Ranella puts in his book, which is like this ancho. It's really suited for wild game because it's chipotle pepper in the adobo sauce, but it's got juniper in there and whole allspice, so it really gives it like this mountainy sauce. It's great. You asked the question, my
No,
God.
I'm laughing because I can't. You're setting that bow to just follow up with those turkey sandwiches.
I have the
Or even
last
celery sticks.
whole silver salmon that I got from Southeast Alaska. So I will throw that on the grill and cook that thing whole. And I have 3 plucked pheasants from a buddy of mine. And I brined those last night, and we'll throw those on the grill as well. And then I ground up a bunch of doves and duck and mixed them with cotija cheese and stuffed them in jalapenos that we'll throw on the grill.
I brought Coors Light. I got a lot of Coors Light. I got some. Bridget, I think I brought some rosé.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Bo, what do you got?
I have the easy part. I'll just say that. It's a cabin. So
I don't even know where to start.
I saw some delicious things on the menu. To be
Yeah,
fair,
we're gonna eat fish.
penne, right?
Yeah, so we're gonna have a penne. We're gonna cook a couple. So let me just go from the beginning. So when we get up to camp, hopefully around 2-3 o'clock, we're gonna whip out some hors d'oeuvres, smoked cheese, some salted meats that we prepared, and crackers, and then some hummus and veggie tray. And then we're gonna go right into dinner. We're gonna have elk burgers tomorrow night, and the first night of the trip. Then we're gonna follow that up with a birthday cake that we're actually gonna bake in the backcountry for Lantani's daughter. And so we'll take some pictures of that.
I was just like, oh, there's no way they're watching this, so we're okay there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, surprise,
surprise,
right?
yeah.
Surprise.
Different Lantani.
Don't tell Land.
Yeah.
And so followed up with that dessert, and then we're gonna cook Norwegian pancakes in the morning, the next morning.
Nice.
And so the toppings, we have a lemon slice topping, and then we have huckleberries that my wife picked for hours and hours and hours.
Yes.
And we've got
They're
some
so small.
huckleberry jam, syrup, and powdered sugar, and fresh strawberries, and to go on top of that with bacon and sausage links. So that's breakfast.
I hope you. I mean, Sunday morning, I'm going to need to be quartered and packed out on a llama after these meals.
Yeah.
So just
I don't know.
you know.
That gives a good idea of what we're cooking, and then we're gonna have appetizer the second day at about 2-3 o'clock. We have an appetizer. I mean, this is way above and beyond, right? Just so people, we don't do this while we're hunting. Everyone, we eat pretty good food, a little bit better than Mountain House most of the time, or Mountain House on steroids. But we're gonna have Dutch oven appetizer pizza. Dutch oven pizza as an appetizer on the second night.
Yeah.
One really cool thing about the trip, I think, too, that we already kind of gave away, but the fact that Land's daughter's coming, and then our friend Tag from Sage Fly Fishing has his son. I think that's going to make it a lot of fun to have some kids around camp and let them experience the llamas and also just see that wilderness, right?
And it's a really good mix of absolute beginners, novice, and then some folks with some experience on everything. So it's always fun when folks are learning.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And seeing things for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah. The other very critical part here is the llamas can carry beer.
Yeah, we talked about Cal and I, and this is probably news to you, but just work with us. We talked about the potential of maybe a cocktail llama. We want to hear this thing coming up, and you hear like the bottles and the ice in there. Maybe you pre-mix some stuff, you put it in the pannier.
I get it.
You have one of those like little fruit hats that we can put on the llama?
We'll do it. I'll design a bag to go to the side so that you can
I like it.
Yeah, just a bladder on the side would be helpful for me.
a drum.
And then if it can tow a
drink drum
sled that I
ladder.
can lie down on once I,
That's
take a
the
dirt
boy.
nap, that'd be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What some more questions we got?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a bunch of great questions. the lots of training questions that my assumption is just too in depth to really cover. But what would be kind of the top 3 points if somebody wanted to take a llama from, I guess, juvenile to trained? Like the 3 things that you always come back to, because like raising dogs, you're like sit, stay, come.
Yep, and consistency.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we did get a good question too to maybe wrap in there. Someone asked if they wanted to buy a llama, are they better off buying a baby? At what age do you like shop for llamas, or what age is the right llama? And then how, to Cal's, what's the training regimen look like?
Cool. I love these questions. I got great answers.
This guy's going for it. This Sam Hill, his brain is really moving, which means this is successful to me.
Float hunting, yes.
He wants to know if you can put a llama on a raft.
You float hunted with it?
Love it.
Yeah, one, and I had this big canoe that my grandpa used to use, and I stuck one in, and then I got one of those 2-inch wide ratchet straps and strapped it over his back as he's laid down. Like, do not move until we get to where we're going. But putting them on jet boats, totally good with that. Matt has done that. Renell has done that a few times, I believe. So as far as training goes, 10 minutes a day goes farther than an hour on Saturday.
It's a lot like dogs.
Yeah, pretty straightforward that way. And there's so much into training. Started writing a book about llamas and training. People have all these questions, and I started writing them down and giving them brochures. And so I'm compiling this book, and I'll probably finish it in 10 years. But
yeah.
Anyway, as far as that goes, and then when you buy a llama, if you're looking for a really quality bred llama that's going to really go and do anything that you expect it to do, or that we talk about their capabilities, buy one whenever you can find one at any age. But if you're really looking for a really good pack llama and you want it to ready to go pack now, you're really looking for a 4, 5, or 6-year-old llama that's been through the training process.
Sorry, we were having a little technical difficulties there, but space requirement. That's a great question.
For keeping them at your house?
Yeah, for keeping them at the house. Like, is this a pack critter that you could have on an acre? Like, and it's going to be destroyed and eaten down to nothing? Or
Sure.
What?
That's a great question and a really hard one to answer, because someone from California bought a llama from me, and then they sent me their pasture. This is when I first got into llamas, and I had just sold some, and it was all desert. And a friend of mine bought one out of the Gallatin Gateway out of Montana, and he had nothing but 6-foot tall, lush grass, right?
Yeah.
And so it just is. It's very dependable upon where you live, the type of soil that you have, if you have irrigation, what kind of irrigation that is.
Also, winter feed, right?
Winter feed, if you can rotate your different seasons. And so it's really, really hard to say and to give an accurate, it's like, this is what it takes. I'll just tell you that a llama can process 1.5 pounds of dry forage per 100 pounds of body weight. And so you just need to figure out basically the biggest pack of llamas a day. Okay. So that's 6.5 pounds a day that they need to intake of dry forage. And so when you look at that, you need to be able to have that, whether it's winter and you're in snow conditions, or you're summer and they're out grazing. So,
and then on these summer trips, dry forage scenario, in your mind, or like, okay, I need to make sure that everybody is like restaked and feeding for an hour every day. 20 minutes is enough. Like, how much graze time do you give them?
Yeah,
or try to give them.
So typically we stake them out in areas where they can spend the day, or at least half the day there.
Okay.
We like to move them twice a day when we're at camp on a big trip like this, just for leave no trace practices and overuse. We don't want to know that the llamas were there.
Yeah.
And so moving them twice a day is great, and they get pretty much where we're going to go. We're going to bring up a little bit of pellets for them.
Yeah. Just
because around the lake there's a lot of rock and not a ton of forage, and I'm not worried about it at all. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. The leave no trace is fantastic. I mean, anybody who's ever been in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, there's some sections of trail in there that look like full 4-wheel drive areas, and a lot of times it's because of changing conditions, and you go in when it's dry and you come out when it's snowed 2 feet or rained 2 inches. So, as far as just general impact to on and off trail, what do you see with the llamas?
So when you look at surface area, right? If llamas had a shoe versus they have a split toe and they've got a soft pad, so they don't have shoes like horses, and just that alone, their impact is much less. And then surface area, right? Because they're able to have the split toe and the soft pad, they have. When you think about a man with a size 11 shoe, and you can put 3 or sometimes even 4 llama hoofs in the footprint of one person, but we have more surface area, so less impact, pressure per square inch, etc. Llamas have just less impact than humans do.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that about the feet too that I think we talked about earlier, but was really different to me than leading a bunch of horses, how quiet they are. Because they have the soft feet, they make no noise. You might hear the pannier rattling or something like that, but the animal itself doesn't, to the point where when I was on that trip, we bumped a cow, moose, and a calf at like 8 yards. They did not hear it coming. So it's pretty great, like in terms of differences, how stealthy they are. Major difference. I mean, you can definitely hunt effectively with them near you, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had I've had elk come into llama camp at night, and sit there and bark at the llamas because they couldn't figure out what in the world they were.
Yeah.
And if you have llamas long enough and you're hunting elk, especially in September, that's definitely going to happen.
Yep.
This one's popped up a few different times. Kind of ties into the water thing. We covered water. You want to water a llama early in the morning, or at least give it a chance to drink every day. It may not. You said 3 days. They can go 3 days.
Yeah, just almost regularly you'll see them like 3 days. In the fall, September, October. Even though they have the chance, just regularly they go those 3 days without drinking. And then they'll drink on the third day, and you're like, oh, okay, all's well.
Okay.
So,
And then the other part of this question was temps.
What?
Are they
Temperatures.
more? Are they
Temperatures.
adverse to high temps, or
Sure.
are they pretty well or good at regulating?
Yeah, that's a good question. So llamas they're experts at thermal regulating, thus the wool. They have dual coats. Car llamas have a fleece underneath, a fiber, and then they've got the long guard hair. And so they're able to regulate really well. However, if you were to say, do they do better in extreme heat or extreme cold? They do better in extreme cold versus extreme heat. But both extremes are difficult on them, right? We were in the up by Shoto in Augusta, Montana, 5-6 years ago, and this massive storm came in. It was 40 degrees and raining. Next day, when we got to camp, it was negative 27.
Alberta Clipper.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. And it was tough on the animals. And that's the coldest I've ever had them at, was negative 27. And we brought them into the sun, staked them out. We cut down an old few pine boughs, and so they were able to, bridge the gap between body and snow.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped out significantly. And then we heated up the water, and they did fine. But it was like that for 3 days. And so we definitely did some mitigation measures. And then when you're hiking with your llamas dead of summer, it's 95 plus degrees, and they don't have any shade and no water the whole day, and you're working them. Some of these, around here, Ketchum and Haley, there's some of these places that are just open hillsides.
Mm-hmm.
And for miles and miles, there's not a tree in sight, and you're coming up on these ridges. They can get heat exhaustion just like any human can. And so just keep an eye on it and be smart with it. But definitely, they are susceptible to heat exhaustion and freezing to death.
Yeah.
But I've seen them in both pretty extreme, 105 degrees and negative 27. Took some precautionary measures, and all was well.
Now, you can get them used to loud noises such as gunshots and whatnot. Yeah, and that's just, I'm sure, shooting around the house, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think so. I took a 3-year-old up. When I was first married in college, I took off the whole month of September to go elk hunting, and I was hiking the Continental Divide between Montana and Idaho. And the goal was to shoot an elk in Idaho, take it out, and then shoot an elk in Montana and take it out. And my brother and I had just done that. He shot an elk in Montana, I shot an elk in Idaho with their bows. And we didn't have enough llamas to get them all out. And one had got injured, and that's why. So my wife met us at the trailhead. We took his out, went back up, and she brought me a 3-year-old llama. And on the way in, we go in there, and there's this guy at the trailhead. When we were getting that third llama, my wife, and he just started shooting his pistol. And the llama never lifted his head up from eating grass.
Crazy.
and had never been around guns, and I found that in multiple scenarios to be true. I mean, sometimes they don't even lift their head to see what's going on.
In my research, when I was trying to figure out about llamas, one thing I commonly read in the forums, archery talk and whatnot, was how effective they are almost as decoys. To your earlier point about elk, and there were multiple posts on there from people that would walk into a herd of elk or towards a herd of elk with a single llama, and the elk would look up and they'd look at it and they'd be right behind it, and it's kind of like a
Really?
yeah, totally. And
That's
I thought that
cool.
was
I tried
either
it with
outlandish or pretty cool.
it's outlandish and cool. I did
Yeah.
it with the antelope. I've got a couple pictures on our website where I walked the llamas into antelope, and they started walking up to us, and I shot one with my bow, and I threw it on the llama, got it and threw it on the llama, and just took it back to the trailer.
Versatility.
Efficient.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was in the college days. I was just being experimental.
Yes.
You know?
Your experimental college days and mine were very different.
We did a little antelope stock, and my buddy, cowboy buddy of mine, so his name is written on the back of his belt, right? It's etched in there.
He's cowboy.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, just take your belt off, throw it on that horse, and we'll sneak up behind the horse. Well, the horse freaks out and takes off. And I'm like, what do you think the rancher's going to think we were up to?
When your belt's attached to the horse.
When
and
your
comes
belt's
back
attached
into
to the horse.
pasture. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one last question. Have you ever eaten llama?
Personally, no. My wife has. A friend of ours cooked it for her in Colorado. She said it was great. That's all I know about it.
Yep.
How'd that come about?
Did that strain the relationship also?
Yes.
I think there was
Yeah.
a little tension in there. So.
Do you find her looking at your llamas differently
No,
now?
no.
Okay.
She's very genuine. She always wanted to know and to say that she had done it. And this guy, he's a really good guy and has a bunch of llamas. And when they get old, he doesn't know what to do with them, so he butchers them and eats them, and that's his protein. So we went over there to visit him and some other llama people, and she had the opportunity and tried it out. So
Sounds right.
yeah, she said it was really good. And my sister-in-law was over with her, and she said the same thing. But she didn't know. My sister-in-law didn't know it was llama until months later.
Okay.
So, pretty unbiased opinion, I guess.
All right. Well, we should start getting this show on the road.
Yeah.
Bo Beatty, Wilderness Ridge Pack Llamas.
Wilderness Ridge Trail Llamas.
I knew he was going to correct you. So
.com. Call Bo
Got
or
some
his
hats.
lovely wife, Kirsten, and they will get you dialed. And like you said, I mean, you're like 6 months out at any given time, right? 8 months out for reservations.
Yeah, the fall it books up pretty fast.
Yeah. So get on it.
Yeah, thanks guys, appreciate it.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
Did we convince you that maybe you should be using pack llamas?
Oh, I love so much of the stuff. I just haven't seen it firsthand. So, yeah, I'm super excited to see the packing portion of this trip. I know from the menu and the activities, that stuff's just going to take care of itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Cool. Maybe you can do a follow up and give some thoughts to some of these questions after you've seen it in firsthand, huh?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping I will be a llama packing pro.
Yeah. Bo, what's your email?
WRTL Beatty, BATY @gmail.com. So
Email Bo if you have any kind of follow-up questions or anything that we didn't get to that you're dying to know about for sure.
yep.
Your sign off. Where are you on like the confidence to nervousness scale on this pack of people that we've put together?
So nervous scale 10, 0 to 10, 10 being the highest. I'm about a 2.
Whoa. Overconfident.
See how that plays out.
Yeah.
We see.
You don't know
thousands of
Tag
videos.
Kleiner that well yet. So.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm just wondering who's going to catch more fish, and I got a young llama on the trip, and I'm excited to see how he does. This is the first time I've been able to push his limits a little bit, so
Nice.
I'm more worried about that than anything else. So I'm excited.
Do we want to give away a hat?
Do you guys have a question that sticks out for you? Go live.
I like the one that referred to the raft because I thought that brought up to it something that I thought would be physically A, impossible, and B, is hard enough canoeing with a dog in your canoe, a hunting dog. So imagining Bo with a llama in a canoe that's literally strapped down.
All right.
That one stuck out to me, but
Bo?
I think the sure-footed one stuck to me because that person that asked that question, I would guess that they probably have some experience with horses, and they maybe had a complication, and so that's why they asked. And that's not something that resonates with me in my mind. I don't think about that anymore.
Yep.
And so that was probably good for people to maybe just grasp an idea of their sure-footedness, and that's not something I think about anymore. So a good question for someone, investigating llamas.
Yes.
what about you?
There was a good one that we didn't answer about how many pack llamas does Tag Kleiner require now,
6.
which I think
To pack him out? I think that was Graham. I saw that too. I think the over/under right there is probably at 3. That's my guess.
Excellent.
We'll report back, Graham.
So we will track you down, our winners, and you get a non-goat hat, a wilderness.
It's not a goat.
It's a pack llama.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks a bunch, and
Yeah. Thanks, Bo. Appreciate it.
let's
Thank
get
you,
the
guys.
heck out of the office.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Fish on.
Yes.